everyone. Welcome back to the Lion's Den. Today we speak with Zeke Camusio, who is the CEO of Data Speaks. Now, Zeke's company is a company of a bunch of machine learning experts, and basically they've taken their machine learning expertise and they've directed it towards helping businesses understand and pull insights out of their digital marketing efforts. So they can tell you which of your digital marketing channels is working best, what the ROI is, what you need to change. And it's pretty amazing. I know in marketing, there's sort of the holy grail is trying to actually understand attribution, which is how much of my revenue that I generated comes from each of my different marketing channels. And it's very, very hard to tie those two things together. But his company, with their machine learning skills, they are actually able to do that. And so super, super smart guy. The conversation goes in all sorts of directions. I think you guys are going to like this. Give it a listen. Zeke, good to see you again. Welcome to the Lion's Den.
Thank you, Nick. It's good to be here.
Nice. So I really want to talk to you about machine learning because I know that is something that you have a degree in, you're an expert in, you use it at your company. And I think a lot of people out there don't really know what it is. I have like a pretty basic level understanding of it, so I'll probably be able to, converse with you a little bit, but I don't really know the full ins and outs. So I would love to kick it off. If you could maybe just give me a quick overview of like, what is machine learning?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that machine learning is really a huge universe and has so many different applications. I think the best definition I can give is to rely on machine computation to do things that would take humans forever. So there's for example, when you think about ChatGPT, that's machine learning. When you think about a spam filter to decide, what's spam, what's not spam, that's machine learning. When you had to figure out, you have 3 or 4 different input variables and you have to understand the output on the variable, that's machine learning. If you want to determine whether a picture is a bird or not, you can use machine learning.
The way that I understand how it's different from like traditional programming, traditional coding, is with traditional coding, you would literally be typing in like, go to the spam email example that you gave. You would literally be typing in like, if the text of the email says this, label it as spam. And you would basically be creating this giant list of like attributes of what spam is. And you would be putting all of that into the code. Whereas with machine learning, you don't actually have to write all of that out. You literally just say, this is spam, this is spam, this is spam, this is spam, this is not spam, this is not spam, this is spam, this is not spam. And then the machine is figuring out what the attributes are based on what you're saying is spam and what isn't spam, right? So it's kind of like figuring out the code for itself, sort of.
Yeah, that's a very very common use of machine learning for sure. It's where and that's a really good juxtaposition that you talked about, where when you write code, you can set all these rules. If things meet a certain criteria, put them in one box. If they meet another set of criteria, put it in a different box. Whereas machine learning, I think it's useful to think about it in terms of 2 distinct steps, right? So you have the training phase where you're giving the model data so you can learn, and then there's usually a phase where it's actually trying to predict something. So and those 2 steps are intertwined. So it uses data to learn, makes a prediction, then compares that predictions against the actual data that is observed, and usually that's adjusting the predictions as it goes, so it becomes more and more accurate. So that's a very, very common use of machine learning.
Okay. So then second thing I wanted to dig a little deeper on, you mentioned the supervised versus unsupervised. So supervised, I think I understand, because it's, again, using the email spam example, you feed a bunch of emails into the machine, you tell it what's spam, what isn't spam. It then understands what the attributes of spam are and non-spam. And so then you can load more emails in and you don't tell the machine what it is. So here's where it's predicting. And then it's going to predict, hey, this is spam, this is not spam, based on what you've already trained me on. Now, at that point, you're looking at its predictions. And if it gets it wrong, you're you're supervising it. So you're correcting it and saying, no, 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 you said this one is not spam. This one actually is spam. And so you're sort of correcting its predictions through supervisions, which then leads to it being even smarter and better at predictions in the future. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then unsupervised, this is what I want to ask about. So with the chess example, that's interesting. Is it capable of unsupervised learning because there is like an end goal in mind? And so it's very clear whether it wins or loses. So it doesn't really need supervision because it's like you either won chess or you lost chess.
Yeah, I think that you probably heard the term black box. So when they talk about ChatGPT, even like the engineers from ChatGPT, if you ask a question and you get an answer, they wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how we got to that answer. And it would be, computationally extremely expensive, and it would just take way too much manpower to even try to crack backwards how we got to that. And what's crazy about that is that I can ask the exact same question and get a completely different answer, right? So that's the way neural networks work, where there's a huge net of this network of these like nodes that are connecting with each other and passing information to each other, and based on the value of each, different ones activate. So it's very much like the human brain, where if I were to ask you, why do you say that thing that you say, you might come up with a possible answer, but it's very likely that there's other factors that influenced you saying what you said.
Yeah, I didn't have enough coffee this morning. My mom texted me something really annoying, and that kind of pissed me off. Yeah, like all those random variables that come into play. Interesting. So if we talk about, training these models, obviously you need a bunch of data to train it. And I think this is probably the thing most people have heard is like, to train a really good model, you need so many mega terabytes of data and freaking, like server farms and all kinds of electricity and stuff like that. How much data do you need to train a model? Like why is that so crazy? Why is that such a big deal?
Well, I think that one analogy that I can give is, if we talk about building a website, you can build a basic website in maybe a day, or you can build a very sophisticated website in months, right? So it's depending on what you want to get out of it, you can build very simple models or very complex models. The reality is that the more data you have, sometimes that has way more to do with the quality of the outputs than the models themselves, because you can, for I'll give you one example, so I'm in the digital marketing space. The data we work with is website data, e-commerce, CRM data, email data, and basically any kind of advertising or marketing channel. So if you're looking at, let's say, you run ads on Facebook, right? So you have, let's say you have 2 or 3 days of data. That's not enough for you to start seeing patterns. The more data you have, the more you understand that you get more traffic on Tuesdays. You get more traffic in the morning. CEOs engage with your content more than data analysts and so on, right? And that's at a very, very small scale. That's what you as a human can process. With machine learning, if you throw a lot of data at it, then it doesn't you don't have to spend as much time as a machine learning engineer figuring out what features to look for. You just give it all the possible features, the gender, job title, industry, everything, and it helps you figure out which of the things are relevant and which ones you can discard. And that's part of the machine learning. Sounds very calculated and scientific, but there's an art side to it, which is, the more you work with it, the more you start realizing there's like literally hundreds of techniques that you can use, and based on the issues that you run into, what is the right tool for the job, and how do you overcome certain issues.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you believe in free will, or are you a hard determinist?
Oh, this is a great question. So I can answer this question on two different levels. One from an absolute standpoint and one from a relative standpoint. So what I mean by that, from a relative standpoint, if I see myself as a person separate from the world, I think that free will is an illusion. And the reason I say that is that if you think about it, we're part nature, part nurture, right? So I didn't choose my nature, right? My DNA that was given to me, my nurturing. Also, I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose my teachers. Um, and I'm heavily influenced by everything around me all the time. So
Yeah.
that's I think it's important to make the distinction between whether or not there's free will and whether or not our decisions matter. Because even if there's all this stuff that I um, that influence my decisions all the time, that it's subconscious. I'm not aware of. My decisions still matter, and they still make an impact. So a lot of people say because free will is an illusion, I'll just you know kind of like they refuse to have an active role in their lives because it's just predetermined, and that's not really it. It's like you still have choices to make, and hopefully you make good ones.
Yeah. And sorry for taking us down this philosophical path, but I just realized, I'm talking to a data guy who, probably believes that if you can collect enough data, you can predict a lot of things. And so I had to ask that question. Um, I was thinking the other day, because I guess I kind of like nerd out to some
Mhm.
physics stuff sometimes, podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's always strange to me how you have like, the laws of physics that apply to like larger bodies. And then you
Mhm.
have
Quantum. Yeah.
quantum physics, which like has different rules
Mhm.
where you can very accurately predict what's going to happen in physics, but in quantum physics, you can't predict
Yeah.
it. There are
Exactly.
certain
Yeah.
weird things. And sometimes I think of humans as like quantum particles
Mhm.
where you can't predict what we're going to do. There is some free will there. But then if you zoom out and you just look at like civilization as like the laws of physics are the laws of civilization in a way,
Yeah.
it almost doesn't matter what you do as a singular particle. We can still predict what's going to happen just based on the mass of humans and the patterns that recur over history and that kind of thing. So I almost have the opposite perspective of what you have. I
Mhm.
think we do have free will and our choices don't matter. That would be my
Interesting.
take on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that because I said I could answer that question from a relative perspective as a subject in this world. I could also answer it as this is going to be a little deeper, more philosophical, but as part of the universe. The one and only consciousness, awareness, God, whatever you want to call it. And from that perspective, we have the illusion of being separate beings in a world that is separate from ourselves. Um, I spent a lot of time meditating and studying Advaita Vedanta. It's translated into English as the direct path, but it's very very common in around India, Nepal, but it just spread all over the world. It's just like a way to go to the deeper level of existence, basically. For whoever's interested, there's this guy Rupert Spira. He's That's Spira. He's a great great teacher of that, and yeah, it's a essentially helping you go to the very very core of your being and figuring out who you are. But that's a little deep for this conversation. I'll just leave it at that for whoever wants to check more into that. But yeah, going back to free will, I think that um, if there's like this really good example that I heard once, where if somebody, once we start having this conversation, like some thought popped into your head? Maybe like, why is he wearing that jacket? Or what is that, book in the background?
Yeah.
So you didn't decide to have a thought. The thought just came up in your field of awareness. And I think that that's why we have this illusion of free will, because we think of ourselves as the thinker of our thoughts, when in reality the things just come up to us and we don't know why that thought came. Maybe we learned to not like the color brown, or whatever, right? And that's also influenced by people in our lives, experiences we've had. So that's what I mean by it. It's we're influenced by the world around us in ways that we don't even understand. But I still believe that although our decisions are not gonna impact the world in ways that, for most of us, right, in ways that it's gonna make a massive difference. It matters to our spouses, our kids, our friends. So I think that that's kind of the betterment of the world is really the betterment of each individual family unit, group of friends, and so on.
Yeah, totally agree. And I also think that we should hang out sometime and maybe consume some substances and chat deeper about this stuff. Um, let's bring it back to planet Earth for a second, and let's talk about your company.
Yeah.
So company is called Data Speaks.
Mhm.
And I guess it's also worth mentioning, you started and ran a digital marketing agency for about 7 years.
Yeah.
You exited that. And then you started this new company, which is, as we've been discussing, machine learning around digital marketing. Like you're pulling in digital marketing data, and that's what you're
Mhm.
training your models on, and you're giving your clients value through that. So I guess my question would be, why did you end up, after you had that digital marketing agency, because you could have just started another one after you sold it. Why did you decide to start a data predictive analytics
Mhm.
agency instead?
Yeah. So what happened after my agency was acquired, I was approached by a couple of clients to do some consulting, and I didn't want to do it at the moment. I kind of needed some time off, so I set my hourly rate really high. So I wouldn't have too many clients. And what I realized is that for every hour that I was talking to clients, I had to spend 4 hours preparing for the meeting. And the reason for that was, one, all their data was scattered. So they had, for example, Google Analytics for their website. They had Google Ads, they have Facebook ads, usually 10, 15 different platforms. So just getting to the data was very time consuming. And then I had to start looking through stuff, right? So, for example, one of the things we look for is, what ads are you spending a lot of money on that are not returning, bringing you revenue, right? So that's one example. There's 100 different things that I would look at. So I set this goal for myself that, I asked the question, what would it look like if I could spend only 15 minutes preparing for each call? I will gain back essentially more than 3 hours of my time for every call. So I started building the solution for myself, so you would do those two things. You would first go to all these platforms, connect to the APIs, get all the data, put it into a data warehouse, clean it up, organize it, and essentially go through a checklist of 100 different things that I would look for as an analyst, filter out all the ones that are not issues or opportunities, and just leave me with maybe the 5 or 6 that I would be presenting to the client. And that was a process of me refining that more and more and more. And yeah, I was able to build that first version of that by myself, but then it became much more complex, and I needed to surround myself with machine learning engineers and data scientists.
Okay. And so that's what your team consists of now, a bunch
Yeah.
of data scientists, basically.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so you get a new client, you bring them in, you connect to the APIs, you pull the data into a warehouse, you start to clean it, then you start to present it in an insightful way, which I'm
Yeah.
sure is some sort of dashboard kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are the sorts of, you mentioned one of the examples of, like,
Mhm.
you know, it would call out, hey, you're not making any revenue off of this ad, turn it off.
Right.
Like what are some of the other things, the aha moments that the analytics would give to business owners?
Yeah. So it's the way to think about it is you are getting in front of consumers through a lot of different channels, or potential clients. So could be LinkedIn, could be Facebook, could be Google, could be YouTube, and so on. There's all these different properties. Um, so the first phase right there is, are you getting in front of the right people? Are you getting in front of them with the right message? Are enough of them clicking through to your website? So that's kind of the first line. Once they come to your website, we had to start with a goal in mind. What do you want them to do? Buy a product, become a lead, get a white paper, book a demo, and where are they getting stuck? So there's a certain section of people, certain segment of people that are doing what you want them to do. What do those people look like? Where are they coming from? Are they male, female, age? What ad creative they responded to? Was it the one where you were talking about your low prices? The one where you were talking about your unique certifications? Like, what is it? What is resonating with people, right? And as they navigate your website, are they following the path that you expect? Are they, for example, coming to a landing page and then submitting a form? Are they coming to that homepage and then click into a product and then add it to the cart and then finishing the transaction? And if not, what's going on with that page? Is it an issue maybe with desktop, mobile, all devices? Maybe is it depending on the type of people that come to the page, or is it a problem for all visitors regardless of who they are? So that's kind of the thing. So like, you start honing down, and I always knew going through this that nothing would kind of replace me, at least for the time being. I still needed to look at things, be able to add those insights to the context that I had about my client, and then have those conversations, right? So it never intended to be a replacement for marketers. It always intended to be, help me save all this time, and let me do what I really enjoy doing, which is analyzing insights and presenting them to clients.
Okay, interesting. So does this, so I guess what you're saying is it doesn't really replace marketers.
Yeah.
So do you work with marketers then? Do you partner with marketers and this becomes a tool in their toolbox? Or do
Yeah.
you also, okay, you do. Okay.
Yeah. We work with, we help marketing teams in individual companies, and we also have the solution for digital marketing agencies that
Okay.
in turn serve other clients. And yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a lot of talk about AI replacing people. So if your job is, maybe filling out a spreadsheet every day, yeah, AI will definitely replace you. But if your job is to provide insight and business value, and there's a lot more that there are certain things that machines are amazing at that would take thousands of humans to replicate one server, right? There's a lot of stuff where machines are not even close. So understanding like how we operate as human emotions, like why sometimes we want to go left and sometimes right, even that the conditions seem to be the same. That subtlety is very unique to humans. So I see it's not AI versus humans, but it's AI plus humans, right? It's like, help
Yeah.
me take off my plate everything I hate doing that is repetitive, and just leaving what I really enjoy. So I think that whoever embraces this mindset is going to get much more out of this revolution that we're going through.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it would be hugely helpful for marketing agencies because of what you just described, where you used to be preparing for a client meeting, it would take you hours, and now it can just be 15 minutes. I mean, I work with some marketing agencies that I bring onto my clients
Yeah.
on onto my projects, and I know what they do leading up to a meeting. They log into Facebook, they look at the different ads, which one has the low cost per click, then they log into Google, and maybe they've pulled some of that data into some sort of a dashboard where they at least can kind of look at it in one place. But the dashboard is not then telling them interesting insights. It's just kind of laying it out. It's laying the data out in front of them. They still have to come up with the insight. So is yours, so is Data Speaks, is your machine learning thing, is it telling them like, hey, based on this data, here's our recommendation, or here's what we're seeing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it does. The filtering aspect of it is really important, right? Like if as an analyst, you'd be looking at, be going through a checklist of 100 different things to look for and only finding 5, the machine can do that for you. Like, so like that's the big piece, and because so the average company has 10 different data sources. What ends up happening is nobody logs into 10 different platforms on a weekly basis. It's just impossible. Nobody has the time, nobody wants to do it. And then after you log in, you have to start looking for certain things. It just makes it impossible to really be a data-driven company if you do it that way. So it really comes down to 2 things. One is bringing all the data to one central hub and filtering out all the noise so you can be left with a signal.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what kind of if we talk about like case studies or testimonials or something, I mean, what are some cool examples of a company you worked with, you rolled this out, and there was like oh my God, we've been doing this all wrong, now we see the error of our ways?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. One of the things we always say is, what do you want to optimize for? And what I mean by that is there has to be a true north. And based on the more clear you have that, the better you can make decisions. So there's this metric in advertising called ROAS, or return on ad spend. So essentially it measures for every dollar that you invest in ads, how much revenue do you get back? And what usually happens is that as you start scaling up a channel, let's say that you're spending $10,000 a month on YouTube ads, and then you go from 10 to 50 to 100 and so on. As you start increasing your reach, you're going to be going outside of your ideal customer profile. And because this is a very, very small segment right in the middle where you're targeting the most ideal customers, and as you want to expand your reach, you're going to get a lower return on investment. But let's say that at the core you get a return on investment of 10, and then if you go from 10,000 a month to 100,000, let's say that you start getting a return on investment of 7, right? It's still very good, right? Like you put $1, get $7 back. It's still profitable. You should still do it. But one example that comes to mind is early this year, there was a company that was optimizing for the return on ad spend. And because they were doing that, they were shrinking their reach, right? So they were getting less and less profit. And they were just not really understanding what was going on, So we started looking at stuff, and we realized that their business objective was to maximize the bottom line, but they were optimizing for the wrong metric. So sometimes that's kind of the missing piece. When somebody doesn't really understand the implications, they're like, yeah, we can just turn down this knob and get the results we want right here, but that's not gonna help the company move in the right direction. So that's kind of a very common example where sometimes it's like reassessing where we're headed and what success looks like.
Yeah. And if it's a company where they don't have a lot of data people, and by the way, my company does, we help businesses with finance a lot. And so same sort of thing as what you're talking about. It's like, it's numbers. And if you don't have people who can read the numbers and pull the right insights out of them, you can start heading down the wrong path, and it can very quickly snowball. So I totally get it. What you must, I'm shifting a little bit here. You must, because you're a thoughtful person and because you have machine learning experience, you must have ideas of other areas that you also want to use your machine learning skills and try to attack. Are you like dabbling in the stock market with this, or sports gambling, or like what excites you about machine learning applications?
Yeah, you know what? I've been an entrepreneur since I was 15. I'm 42 now, so essentially my entire life. And I realized about 5 or 6 years ago that my biggest flaw as an entrepreneur was the shiny object syndrome. I always wanted what was new, what was exciting, and I had a really difficult time staying focused on the key vision for the business. So I promised myself that this time I wouldn't let that happen again. So I have all these ideas of all the things I could be using machine learning for, but I also realized that even doing if you try to be the best in the world at something, even that one thing is really tough. So why would you try to be the best in the world at 5 or 10? So that's kind of how I see it now. It's really hard, because I do have all these ideas and exciting things that I could go after, but I think it helps me to think about the opportunity cost. So every hour that I spend doing X, I'm not doing my main thing. So I need to be 100% working on my main thing, thinking about my main thing, dreaming about my main thing, and that's the only thing. The main thing is gonna become the main thing, right? Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's great discipline. I hear you. And look, I mean, there's a lot more life left. You've
yeah,
exited one business, or at least one that I know of. You grow this one for another 5, 10 years, sell
yeah.
this, and who knows? You may not even care about machine learning at that point anymore. You've got something else you're excited about then.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll always be interested in technology and using that to make our jobs easier. Like I spent a little bit of last week thinking about where AI is going to be like 2 years from now. So I can get ahead of it and start building systems for myself and my company, leveraging what's not here yet but will be here. So it's all sort of thing. Like what it has to access everything, all the data, right? Like every email I wrote, every document on my computer, my AI recording software calls. So it's on every call. Here's everything I say, right? So it has access to all the information that I have. It also has my own kind of direction, right? Like my communication style, how I like information being presented to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it also needs to have executive power. Like I need to be able to tell it to do things. It needs to live. Right now ChatGPT is an application in its own, but more and more every tool is developing its own AI. But I think there's going to be something that essentially controls your computer, is connected to the internet, where you could just say, figure out what I talked to Nico about last week, email that to my assistant, and have her post that to social media, right? And like all I need to have is that thought. So I'm even thinking, Elon Musk, Neuralink, I don't even want to have to type that. I want that to, because we think way faster than we can type, So
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time thinking about where the puck is going to be, and how I can get there before it arrives.
Yeah. You know what
Yeah.
might be dangerous with that, though? Bringing it back to the beginning of our conversation, those random thoughts that pop into our head. Like, what if you all of a sudden got a text message from me that said, Zeke, I really don't like that brown jacket. And I was like, shit, I did not mean to send that. That was just a
Right.
thought that I,
That's
by the way,
yeah.
I like your jacket, by the way.
Oh, thank you. My wife was saying, why are you wearing a jacket? This because it's cold. It's getting cold. But yeah, like anyway. Yeah, no, I think that's. I mean, there's gonna be some, you know, fails with that technology, just like with any other technology we're had. I think that as there's a lot of reasons to not be an early adopter of a lot of things because they don't work well at first. But I think
Yeah.
that if you keep your expectations, you know, mild, and you just start playing around with all this technology and start reading about where it's going to be headed, you're going to get so many ideas in terms of uh, like where you can save time, where how you can replicate yourself and multiply your ability to do things much faster, much slower, much faster, much cheaper, and that's just gonna help you move to wherever you're headed.
Yeah. Amen. Awesome. Well, I want to wrap it up here. Thank you again for coming on, by the way. And if there's listeners out there who are interested and want to dial things up on their digital marketing and work with you guys at Data Speaks, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can write me at zeke@dataspeaks.ai, or find me on LinkedIn, Zeke, Zeke, Camusio, Camusio.
Okay, cool. We will link to that. We'll put your website obviously in the show notes as well, so people can get to that. And highly recommend you guys go check out the website. I know you have a new website coming out sometime pretty soon too.
Yeah.
And otherwise, man, thank you again for joining me in the Lion's Den.
Likewise, Nico, it was a pleasure, and be well. We'll talk soon.